Hello everyone, my name is Nathan Osler and I'm going to be starting a series of videos doing little recaps on Steeler football. I want to try to do every game to the best of my ability, and it is officially week 1 of the NFL season and it is complete. Sunday Night Football is going on right now. The Giants are getting whooped currently, and you could say the Steelers were whooped today. They were definitely whooped by the San Francisco 49ers. Final score of 30-7. And it was not the ideal opening day that a lot of members of Steelers Nation really wanted or really saw coming. I feel like a lot of members of Steelers Nation thought this was going to be a very close game. A lot of people hyped up this team in the preseason and even before preseason games. Everyone was like in the draft saying, oh, this team, it looks really good. These additions were amazing. We saw a lot of additions to the offensive line. We saw a lot of additions to the wide receiver room. Saw a lot of additions to the secondary. And we get to the first game of the regular season. Steelers get the ball first, and then we all saw the graphic. Before the end of the first half, there was a point where we had 1 total yard of offense. And it's just confusing. And I'm going to do my best inability to not to get angry while I talk about this, because yes, it's week 1 of the NFL regular season and a lot of people overreact, and I definitely had my fair share of overreactions during the game today. And by the time this goes out, it'll probably be a couple days later after this game, but in the premise of it was today, and I had some fair shares of overreaction. I had my rants. I had my screaming at my television moments. I had the moments where I was about to throw something at my TV, but I was like, oh, this is the only TV I have. I can't do this. And that is what the Pittsburgh Steelers can do to you. They are one of those teams that will get your hopes up, and then it just goes downhill. It seems like this is a trend every year, and I call it heart attack games. We saw it every game at the end of the season, and it seems like Kenny Pickett thrives the best, especially when the game matters the most. And the one offensive drive that was the best drive is when it kind of mattered the most for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and we will get to that soon. So I'm going to start here with a little bit of scoring summary before I go into a breakdown of what I watched and what many could say was probably Kenny Pickett's worst game of his NFL career. And it's crazy for me to say that because I am a massive, and I mean massive, Kenny Pickett supporter. I'm a Pitt fan, and I have, of course, the bias of being a Pittsburgh Panthers fan. Kenny Pickett will go down in history as the best college career in Pitt football history, the most passing yards in Pitt football history, over Dan Marino, over many, many other Pitt greats. And Kenny Pickett is on the top of that list. And when the Steelers drafted him, I was very excited. I was like, I am buying his jersey. It is time. He is homegrown. Here he went to University of Pittsburgh. He's from New Jersey. He went to Pitt. And this is going to be the quarterback to take over after Big Ben. So last year comes around, and we see Mitchell Trubisky start. A lot of fans were not happy with this. Personally, I was fine with it. As you know, Kenny Pickett's not going to be ready first week. He's a rookie at the time. Pickett comes in, a couple bad games. He had to go through the Eagles and the Bills, and those were his first 2 starts. But other than that, he finished 7-5. I'm pretty sure was his record as a starter. And we saw at the end of the year, I think it was a 6-2 stretch, and the Steelers finished 9-8. And Kenny Pickett showed his clutch factor in a lot of those drives. I was at the Franco Harris Memorial game, the Christmas Eve game, where it was freezing outside, and Kenny Pickett found George Pickens in the end zone with about a minute left in the ballgame. And that was just one of the many game-winning drives Kenny Pickett has done. We saw the one to Najee Harris in Baltimore in the final week of the season. Well, going into the final week of the season. And that was a huge touchdown. That kept the Steelers' playoff hopes alive. And we saw how it went. The Steelers did not make the playoffs last year. And you just think you have optimism for 2023. So offseason comes around, and Kenny Pickett's been known to be working out with people down in the South. I think it was in Florida or whatever. And everyone's like, oh, this is going to be a great year. You add the likes of Allen Robinson to the situation. You add your first round pick, Broderick Jones, to the situation. who is a member of the offensive line. You retool this offensive line, bring in some key pieces there, and we get to game 1. And the first drive is an interception. And we saw what Kenny Pickett did in the preseason. Amazing. I think it was 5 for 5 on preseason drives for him, all resulted in points. He was throwing deep balls to the likes of George Pickens. And I was like, you know what? Maybe this offense has changed. Maybe it has changed for the better. Maybe Matt Canada has changed some of these plays in his playbook, and we're not going to see the same things like jet sweeps on 2nd and long, like we saw all of last year before Chase Claypool was traded. And it was with Matt Canada's offense, you could call the play before it happened. And that is what frustrates a lot of Steelers fans today. So game 1 starts, and the Steelers elect to receive the football. And personally, I was confused by this, because I was like, you know what, I'm always deferring in that situation just in case. And I think they, based on the score of this outcome, they probably should have deferred. So, in the first quarter, the scoring started after that interception by Kenny Pickett, the first, 1 of 2 for him today. Brandon Ayuk, an 8-yard pass from Brock Purdy, made it 7-0 with 9:29 left in the first. And then with 4:38 left in the first, Jake Moody, the rookie from Michigan, hits a 41-yard field goal, make it 10-0. This confused me. So the Steelers were trying to, it seemed, to ice the kicker in this situation. And they kind of did, but they all jumped off sides. So you call a timeout, you block the kick, but to block the kick, you all jumped off sides. And this infuriated me because it made it a shorter field goal, so they still only got 3 points. But you wasted a timeout on that whole ice the kicker thing, and then you got a successful block on the kick, but you get nothing out of it because everyone was offsides. So that's a completely different story. Special teams was not really the biggest issue. There was only probably 1 or 2 bright spots on this team today. And we'll get to those, my bright spots of the game. So then the second quarter comes, another touchdown drive. Brandon Ayuk yet again, 19-yard pass from Brock Purdy, makes it 17-0, and the Steelers have yet to respond. 8:22 left in the game, in the second half that is, well, first half. Jake Moody yet again, a 32-yard field goal. The rookie kicker is having himself a good first career game. 20-0. And then we see the 2-minute drill for the Pittsburgh Steelers offense, backed up around their own 5-yard line. And this is the only good drive the Steelers offense was able to put together. And it baffles me. Like I said before, Kenny Pickett in the clutch is a different Kenny Pickett than what you can see majority of the time during the game. It's kind of odd. And I love having a quarterback that can make these clutch drives with 2 minutes left and a half or 2 minutes left in a whole football game. But I would love to see Kenny Pickett improve in the aspect of playing the entire quarter, an entire half, an entire game like it's the final 2 minutes of the game. And it just didn't feel like that today. And I don't know if it was like it's the first home game. The Steelers haven't had a home opener in years. I don't know if it was just the nerves of having a home opener. I don't know if it was just the 49ers defense is absolutely amazing, which they are. Don't get me wrong. They are an amazing defensive core. But there was something wrong here with the Steelers offense, and I can even admit there was something wrong with Kenny Pickett today. And it just sucks to say that this did not look like the Kenny Pickett we saw at the end of the last season and in the preseason. And yes, the preseason is against bench people, bench players, but at the same time, it was still cool to see that type of player that we all think Kenny Pickett can become. A guy that's throwing balls deep down the field. But we saw the Steelers offensive play call was just completely different. We saw the jet sweep. We saw a little flea flicker or whatever it was to Jalen Warren, and it was a weird throw as Pickett was able to get out of a sack, and Warren's just standing there, and Jalen Warren makes a catch and is immediately tackled. There was not a lot of room for a rushing attack at all. There's a lot of fans out there upset that Najee Harris only gave him 5 points on fantasy, and that's one of the reasons. There was not a rushing attack. they hardly used Jalen Warren. And if they used Jalen Warren, he was usually stopped right away. And we saw a lot of Jalen Warren usage in the preseason. And it seemed like he had a better preseason than Najee Harris. And I was personally expecting Jalen Warren to get a couple more snaps. He deserves it. So going into this 2-minute drive, it ended up being 1 minute and 25 seconds. The Steelers were able to do 12 plays, go 95 yards up the field, and it ended with a Pat Freiermuth 3-yard pass from Kenny Pickett for the touchdown. The Chris Boswell extra point right after. With 10 seconds left in the game, the touchdown happens. The Steelers get on the board 20-7. And that probably is the worst first half of Steelers football that I can remember in a very, very long time. The only other time that I have, I guess, felt sick to my stomach watching a Steelers game like that was probably the Browns and Steelers wild card game. That, of course, began with the high snap over Big Ben's head, and then it was like 28-7 or 28-0 like in the first quarter. That was probably the worst Steelers game I have watched. And this had those vibes. Everyone was hyped up about this team, and it just fell apart. So then we get to the third quarter. The second half begins. The 49ers get the ball to start. And you entered the second half with a lot of optimism because it's all about momentum in the National Football League. If you get the momentum at the right time, the game can swing in your favor. So the Steelers go into the half looking like a terrible offense, but they end the half on a high note with the touchdown. Great drive, 95 yards, by far the best drive of the day. Well, I would say the only good drive of the day for the Steelers, but at the time, best drive of the day. They actually got across the 50-yard line on that drive, and you would think there's the momentum swing. And with 14:02, so 58 seconds into the third quarter and the second half, the 49ers offense and Christian McCaffrey says no to any optimism, and McCaffrey gets a run for 65 yards. 2 plays, 75 yards, a touchdown for CMC. 27-7 in favor of the San Francisco 49ers. So with that, as I'm watching this game, I am just, I guess, sick to my stomach because it's like the Steelers are so good at tugging on your heartstrings every game they are in. So it's your emotions will change based on the momentum swings that the Steelers go on. They go into the second half playing one of the worst halves of offense or worst halves of football they have had in a very, very long time. And they start the second half on another bad note after gaining the momentum, and McCaffrey finds a wide open hole, broken tackles, all the way takes it to the house for a 65-yard touchdown run. So it's 27-7. Nothing else happened in that third quarter for either team. At that point, it felt like San Francisco, every single drive was literally just trying to run out the clock. And they still tried doing some stuff. And all credit goes to Kyle Shanahan, the head coach of the San Francisco 49ers. He made a statement this game. He definitely is showing the National Football League that the 49ers are not to be messed with. A lot of people, including myself, are not really high on the 49ers, and especially Brock Purdy. And they definitely won over a lot of fans today. They won over a lot of football fans saying, hey, we are more than capable of going back to the promised land, going back to the Super Bowl that they were one win away from when the Eagles beat them last year in the NFC Championship. They are more than capable of making it to the Super Bowl and even winning. They are more than capable of winning this Super Bowl. That offense is amazing. Like Brock Purdy, he went from Mr. Irrelevant to basically being covered with a huge human shield with the likes of many great talents. Brandon Ayuk, 2 touchdowns today. They also have Christian McCaffrey. He had an amazing game. And don't even get me started about Deebo Samuel. Deebo Samuel can run and catch. He can do it all. So that touchdown by CMC made it 27-7. At that point, it seemed like a lot of Steelers fans were heading to the exit, and it basically became a San Francisco 49ers home game at Acrisure Stadium in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And there was one more little bit of scoring. Jake Moody with his third field goal of the game with 5:30 left in the entire game in the fourth quarter. Makes it 30-7, and that was it. That was the season opener for the Pittsburgh Steelers. 30-7 is your final score. Let's do the game leaders comparisons for both teams, and this just shows the difference. I want to start with the rushing attack especially. And your leaders for both teams, of course, were very different. Christian McCaffrey, 22 carries, 152 yards, and a touchdown. Steelers defense was not able to stop Christian McCaffrey, and that is a common thing in the National Football League. Is Christian McCaffrey, when healthy, is one of, if not the best running back in all of the NFL. And he proved that today. And for the Steelers, the best rushing attack was Najee Harris. He only got 6 carries today and got 31 yards. He did what he could do. He was doing all that he was given to do because the Steelers threw the ball 46 times. And when you're down by that much and you think you have a chance to come back, you really don't want to run out the clock by running the football. So it makes sense Najee and Jaylen Warren didn't have a lot of rushing attempts. And it was all Kenny Pickett today leading this offense. They weren't really relying on the ground game. They were relying on the ball in the air. And let's go into the passing game. Well, actually, no, let's start with the receiving game. Leading the way for the 49ers, like I said before, was Brandon Ayuk. 8 receptions, 129 yards, and 2 touchdowns. One of those catches was very good for Brandon Ayuk. He had himself an amazing season debut. One of definitely the Week 1 standouts for the entire National Football League. I would put him up there with the likes of Tyreek Hill for having one of the best games this week. And for the Pittsburgh Steelers, it kind of shocks me who is the leading receiver. It wasn't the likes of George Pickens. It wasn't Deontay Johnson. And Deontay Johnson could be in a little bit of a trouble with an injury he got in the game, and hopefully he's okay. Because he made a pretty good catch, but immediately went down, looked like with a hamstring injury. But no, it was Allen Robinson II. A. Robinson, 5 receptions, 64 yards. It seemed like Kenny Pickett was connecting with Allen Robinson very well in this game. It seemed like he could be one of those veteran receivers that Kenny Pickett feels comfortable with. Feels like they have a lot of chemistry, and we didn't get to really see that chemistry in action a lot in the preseason, and it seemed like Kenny Pickett liked throwing to George Pickens more on those drives than Deontay. But Allen Robinson thrived today with Kenny Pickett. I liked him on the Steelers receiving corps today. And yeah, so let's get into the passing yards. So passing-wise, Brock Purdy, 19 for 29, 220 yards, 2 touchdowns. McCaffrey in the rushing game at 152 yards. He was pretty close to Brock Purdy's total passing yards. So McCaffrey was the offense today for the San Francisco 49ers. And Brock Purdy's 2 touchdowns, of course, go to Brandon Ayuk, who, like I said, had an amazing game. But yeah, 2 touchdowns, 220 yards, 19 for 29 for Brock Purdy. And now let's get to Kenny Pickett. So, like I said before at the beginning of this, I am a big Kenny Pickett fan, and I was shocked today by what I saw. 31 for 46, 200, not 300. So 31 for 46, 232 yards. So more than Brock Purdy, but he also threw the ball about 20 more times. 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions. The first interception was interesting because it seemed like Deontay Johnson slipped trying to make the catch. So that was the first interception. That was the first drive of the game. And then we saw one to Connor Hayward, but it was in front of Connor Hayward. But in front of Connor Hayward were about 2 or 3 defenders for San Francisco. So it seemed like Kenny Pickett was a little bit off today. And you could tell by the final score that he was definitely off. But the entire Steelers team was off. Something was different about this team today that we didn't see, I guess, at the end of last season or even in the preseason, if you want to count that. This was a completely different Steelers team. So Kenny Pickett, 31 of 46, 232 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions. So Kenny Pickett, I don't think people need to give up on him yet. If you are already giving up on Kenny Pickett, I'll just go out and say you're pretty crazy. I know Pittsburgh is one of the most die-hard sports cities in America, and I have this conversation with so many people every single day. With being the most die-hard sports city in America, if not one of the most die-hard cities in America, the fans of Pittsburgh are cutthroat. They will speak their mind, and a lot of the things they speak out of their mind make absolutely zero sense. I saw tweets today calling for Kenny Pickett to be cut from the team. I saw tweets today calling him for him to be benched. No. Are you stupid to even say that? No, 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 no. You don't cut or bench a second-year quarterback who's making his first start of the season in year 2. He showed a lot of development in the preseason. He showed a lot of development. He was cool, calm, and collected in the end of last season, trying to get to the Steelers to get to the postseason. It came up just short. If the Jets were able to beat the Dolphins in the final week of the regular season, the Steelers would have been the 7th seed in the playoffs. So Kenny Pickett almost got the Steelers to the postseason, but just fell up short. But this Kenny Pickett, he definitely needs a little bit of a confidence boost because this was not the game he wanted to start out with, and people calling for him to be benched or cut, if the first instance Mitch Trubisky were to start and make a mistake, they would be begging for Kenny Pickett to be back in there starting. So Steelers fans can be crazy sometimes. It's just a lot of overreactions. It's week 1. 30-7. I know, it's a tough loss. 30-7 is not the way that you really want to begin your path to possibly be a Super Bowl team and win the Super Bowl, or it's not the way you want to begin your path if you're in the Steelers situation, losing 30-7. You don't want to begin your path to be a sleeper team to make the playoffs. A lot of people are, I think, disrespecting or discrediting the Pittsburgh Steelers of being they're calling the Steelers like one of the worst teams in the NFL, going to have a losing record. But I always say it to people, Tomlin finds a way to have a winning record. Whether that be 9-8 like last year, whether it be the 8-8s of the world. It could also be an 8-7-1. I think we've had that before. It could be, honestly, the way the new schedule is, I feel like Tomlin could find a way to get that winning season going with an 8-1 record. That's always what I like to joke with people. And you got to hope that doesn't happen. But it easily could happen. But with the Pittsburgh Steelers, they need to, I guess, get up and move on to the next week against Cleveland Browns. And the Cleveland Browns looked very impressive. Overall, I would say that the AFC North quarterbacks did not look the best in week 1. And many people calling for Pickett being the worst quarterback in the AFC North week 1. That is completely false. That goes to Joe Burrow this week. He did not do good at all. He had less than 100 passing yards after getting his contract. And Joe Burrow still is the best quarterback in the AFC North. Top 3 in the AFC, but he did not play like it in week 1. But it's just the overreactions that are just making me laugh. It's week 1. Yes, I even overreacted when the game was going on. I was freaking out. I was so excited for Steelers football to be back. And then it's just the Niners scored almost every single drive in the first half. And when I saw that graphic that said 199 total yards to 1, I felt like I was dying on the inside and begging the football gods to just end this game and let us move on to week 2. So I want to take a look at other keys that happened in this game. And I'm looking at the win probability. It was all 49ers. There was 0 probability on the other side. Usually the chart changes once a team scores. No, it was all, and I mean all, San Francisco 49ers all the way, which is nuts. I have never seen that before on this ESPN that I'm using here. And the win probability is literally all red. And that just shows how bad of a game it was, but it's week 1. 30-7 final score. Let's look at the box score here. And I want to give you, I guess, if you're listening here, keys that were good for the Steelers, things that I want to see improve which we've already kind of covered the things that need to improve. I guess it's like you could basically say I'll just start with that. Things to improve with the confidence with the entire team. So you lose 30-7 week 1. The team is definitely at a low right now. You just got to improve the confidence. Move on to week 2, especially with Kenny Pickett. Pickett took 5 sacks today also. It seemed like the O-line kind of just gave up at the end. I was starting to feel bad for Kenny there. You could tell he was trying to do something with the football, but he just didn't have time a lot of the time. He lost 34 total yards just through sacks, which was very annoying to watch. It just seemed like the whole offensive line just gave up. And that's another key issue that I had with this game. Rushing-wise, I also want to cover Jaylen Warren here. 3 carries. I know Najee had 6 for 31. 24 yards was the longest. We saw a long run there for Najee Harris today. That was pretty good. It took a while for him to get going in last season. So hopefully this can be a little bit of a stepping stone for us. See some more Najee action in week 2 against the Cleveland Browns. But Jaylen Warren is one of my takeaways here for things that I would like to see improve. Not Jaylen Warren, not that Najee Harris isn't good or anything. I love Najee Harris. But Jaylen Warren was amazing in the preseason. It seems like I feel like he's faster than Najee. Najee's definitely more of a power back, has more strength. But Jaylen Warren, if he breaks free, he's going to the house. Jaylen Warren had 3 carries for only 6 yards, and every single time he was just stuffed right at the line of scrimmage. And his longest rush of the day was only 3 yards. That has to change. If the Steelers want to do anything on offense, they have to be able to use Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren to the best of their abilities. Give them both the football. Let them do what they can do. Give Jaylen Warren some freedom to do some running. Give him some more rushing attempts. The Steelers had 10 total rushing attempts this game. 10 total carries for 41 yards. 10 total carries. The 49ers had 34 total carries. Christian McCaffrey had more runs than the entire Steelers rushing attack that included Kenny Pickett, so 3 people, and he also had more than Najee and Jaylen Warren. They only had 9 combined. Kenny Pickett had 1 at the end of the game. 1 for 4 yards. Receiving-wise, of course, we saw, like I said before, Deontay went down with a hamstring. George Pickens was 5 for 36. I was shocked Kenny wasn't throwing to him more. The guy that had the most receptions for the Steelers, I'm pretty excited about this, and I'm hoping it could continue. Calvin Austin III. We lost him last year after he was drafted. I was very excited. Very fast guy. Saw some great punt returns from him in the preseason. He goes 6 for 37. But Allen Robinson was the guy for Kenny Pickett today. 5 for 64. And I already said Brandon Ayuk was the guy for the San Francisco 49ers. 8 for 129 yards. I thought the Steelers did a okay enough job limiting Deebo Samuel and George Kittle. Deebo Samuel went 5 for 55. His longest was 22. George Kittle was 3 for 19 with the longest reception of 11 yards. But at the same time, doing that, canceling those 2 out, left Brandon Ayuk open a lot of the times. And that was an issue with the secondary that I had. And that's another key issue I had here was the secondary. Also, Pat Freiermuth, he went down, I think it was with a chest injury, but he still got a touchdown. He had 1 reception for 3 yards. Before that injury, I was kind of shocked they weren't really throwing to Pat Freiermuth. But I guess that was another issue, is they were just not finding space to get open. So I guess if I were to give a positive from this game, a lot of people are thinking the one player that was definitely the positive is TJ Watt, which I want to start with him. But there's definitely another one that I really liked here that sparked my interest. But I'm going to get to him next. But TJ Watt definitely seemed to be the only Pittsburgh Steeler to show up on the field today. And remember that there was a football game to be played. And even down 27-7 at a time, TJ Watt was playing like it was a playoff game. TJ Watt was playing to provide a spark for the Steelers' defense to maybe give the offense a little bit of a momentum. Of course, we didn't see that momentum on the offensive side of the ball, but the defense is doing all they could. The defense was definitely at the point they were tired because the offense was out there for a 3-and-out, and the defense had like a 2-minute break at points. TJ Watt, 5 total tackles, 5 solo tackles, 3 total sacks. He ties the Steelers' franchise record, I'm pretty sure, with James Harrison. and he had 2 fumbles, 1 tackled for a loss, and one of those fumbles he recovered. The one was the one that Brock Purdy somehow got while he was kind of sitting on. It was like under his back. Very weird, very impressive. But the Steelers challenged it, and I thought that was a waste of a challenge. And Tomlin hasn't really been successful on challenges lately. That's another pet peeve of mine with Mike Tomlin. But you got to challenge it. The way it was going, you definitely challenge it there because it definitely was all 49ers, and the Steelers were just looking for something to go their way. Nothing was really going their way today except for TJ Watt. He was living up to the name of TJ Watt, the Watt family name, him and JJ, and if you want to include Derek in there, the fullback. And yeah, he was living up to his name today. He was living up to that Defensive Player of the Year award. And the Steelers did good here with Nick Bosa. Nick Bosa had 0 sacks today for the 49ers. He only had 2 total tackles, and 1 was by himself, so only 1 solo tackle. No tackles for a loss. So the Steelers' offensive line was able to hold, I guess, Nick Bosa to nothing today. But TJ Watt was a menace today on defense, like always. And before I want to end this little bit of a recording here, first episode here, we're about half an hour in. So thank you for listening if you are listening still. Anthony McFarland on kick returns, I actually was a fan of. I was expecting it to be Calvin Austin back there. Calvin Austin had 1 punt return today because there weren't a lot of punts for San Francisco. They had 3, and only one of them was able to be returned, and it was a 2-yard return. So Calvin Austin didn't get to really see much of that. But Anthony McFarland Jr., the 3rd-string running back, was your kick returner today. 3 returns for 91 yards, and his longest was a 34-yard return. I don't think a lot of Steeler fans are giving Anthony McFarland credit here. Anthony McFarland Jr. looked very good on the special teams and kick returning, and I kind of like him as an option back there. Him and Calvin Austin the third, and I would say Anthony McFarland Jr., if I had to pick a player of the game, it's him and TJ Watt. I would put TJ Watt first, of course, but Anthony McFarland Jr., he's up there. He didn't get any rushing attempts because he wasn't in that 3 with, it would have been Najee, Jalen Warren, and Kenny Pickett, the only rushing attempts here for Pittsburgh today. But Anthony McFarland Jr. looked very good on special teams. He looked pretty fast, and even the announcers were saying, the way he was returning, it seems like a matter of time before he takes it to the house. So 3 for 91 for Anthony McFarland on kick returns. 34 was his longest. And on the kick returns for San Francisco, they had none. They didn't have to worry about kick returns. Only in the second half, and it was a touchback. The Steelers just weren't scoring. So they had no kick returns. Ray McLeod, the former Steeler, had 3 returns for 41 yards. He had a very good block to help out with Christian McCaffrey's to-the-house touchdown. But yeah, so I want to give a little bit of a player of the game for each team. I'm going to give, I guess, the player of the game for the 49ers, if I had to give one. I would give it to I'm going to give it to Christian McCaffrey. It's close with him and Ayuk. Ayuk had 2 touchdowns, of course, 129 yards. But McCaffrey, I think, single-handedly took down the Steelers' defense. And anywhere T.J. Watt wasn't, it seemed, or T.J. Watt wasn't in a play, McCaffrey was just able to go to the house. 22 for 152 yards, a touchdown. I'm giving him the player of the game just on the premise mainly of that 65-yard rushing touchdown that basically sent Steelers fans home. They thought we thought we would get some momentum after that terrible first half, getting that end of the half touchdown, but starting second half with that 65-yarder to the house killed a lot of the momentum. For the Steelers, it's TJ Watt. He ties the franchise record for sacks. And yeah, it's TJ Watt easily. 2 fumbles, 1 recovered. So yeah, TJ Watt's my player of the game there. So looking ahead to the Cleveland Browns. So Cleveland is going to be 1-0 heading into this matchup. They defeated the Cincinnati Bengals 24-3. So I'm not going to give a scoring prediction because I'm not planning on doing a pregame. But just looking at how the Steelers offense did and how the Browns offense did, I mean, Deshaun Watson today against the Cincinnati Bengals, 154 yards, a touchdown, and a very bad interception. It was one of the funniest ones I've ever seen. He just threw it right to the Bengals. 16 for 29. But also on the other side of the ball, Joe Burrow was 82 yards, 14 for 31. So in all honesty, all the AFC North quarterbacks were not that good. And I'm actually going to take a look at Lamar Jackson. 17 of 22, 169 yards, no touchdowns, and an interception. So, in all honesty, you could say Kenny Pickett might have been the best quarterback in the AFC North today, besides maybe Lamar Jackson. I mean, Lamar Jackson, Deshaun Watson actually won the games, but you could also say Kenny Pickett, if you live on passing yards being your statistic, Kenny Pickett led in passing yards. So, it was not really a good day for any of these offenses. And yeah, so Baltimore beat Houston 25-9 in week 1. Just a little bit of score updates for the AFC North, and Cincinnati loses to Cleveland in an AFC North matchup 24-3. So looking ahead for the Steelers, they host Cleveland Monday Night Football next week, and that reaction, if I do one, definitely could come out right after the game, so you can get like live after the game reaction. So I don't want to really pick a winner, but if I were to pick a winner, and with as little bias as possible, Kenny Pickett had a very good game when he played Cleveland for the first time last year. It was a very good game for the Steelers offense. They were able to silence Deshaun Watson in Pittsburgh. I am with as little bias as possible, and I know I have a gut feeling I'm going to be wrong. I am going to take the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think Mike Tomlin, by this time next week, we will be going in, well, this time next week will be Sunday night still. But going into the Monday night game, I think it's going to be a different team he's going to be leading out on the field. They're going to have a lot of confidence. They are going to forget all about week 1, and I feel like they're going to treat week 2 like it's the start of the season. I felt as if the team thought they were still in the preseason there. So I am going to take the Steelers somehow finding a way to defeat Cleveland next week. I'm not going to give a score. I think it's going to be a close game. It's going to go either way. But I believe in the Steelers still. It's week 1. I know it's overreaction, but I guess the premise of this video, or how I'm going to release it yet, I don't know, is don't overreact. It's week 1. I even overreacted during this game. I was doing my fair share of angry tweets. I was doing my fair share of spamming my friends saying, this team is garbage. I don't like this team. I can't do this anymore. It's every year. I even dropped the infamous fire Tomlin line, even though I don't believe in firing Tomlin because he's never had a losing season. And I understand fans are like, can we please win a playoff game? I understand winning seasons are awesome, but can we please win a playoff game? And I understand that. But it's just about how efficient the Steelers have been. They've been known to never have a losing season. I hope that doesn't end. I really hope that doesn't end. I hope Tomlin's able to keep winning seasons forever. It's the only Tomlin I've known. I'm now a senior in college. I have never witnessed a Tomlin losing season for my entire education, I'm pretty sure. Because Tomlin definitely started before I was, maybe the year after I was in kindergarten. I'm not sure, but I guess the premise of this, the storyline I want to say is, week 1, don't overreact. Steelers lost 30-7, yes, but it's not worth the overreaction. Not worth thinking too much about. I know fans are upset, but I say move on to week 2. Move on to week 2. Have a fun time, and all you can say is, here we go, Steelers. Just keep waving those terrible towels. Pack Acrisure Stadium against Cleveland. Boo the Browns. That's what they do best, Steelers fans. They do not like Cleveland. And Cleveland's honestly probably my least favorite team in the AFC North. I respect competition. I respect the Bengals. I respect the Ravens. I just despise Cleveland. I don't know what it is. I just despise Cleveland. So that is going to do it for this Game 1 recap. Week 1 is over. Steelers lost 30-7, final score, against the San Francisco 49ers. If you listen to this video, thank you very much for listening to this commentary here. It's been fun. I'm excited for this Steelers season. I'm excited to see what else the Pittsburgh Steelers can do. And it has been a blast talking some Steelers football. And thank you for listening. I've been Nathan Osler, and have a great day.